It seems incredibly likely that this year we will see war with Russia, potentially World War III. A lot of people don't want to believe it. They say it's too far-fetched. It can't happen. There will never be another world war. But right now, Joe Biden is considering sending 50,000 troops, as well as warships and aircraft, to NATO allies in Eastern Europe over a fear of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. NATO is already sending fighter jets and aircraft carriers into the region, and maybe it can be contained in Eastern Europe. But China has just sent fighter jets into Taiwanese air defense airspace. It seems incredibly likely that the moment a war breaks out in Europe, China will take Taiwan. We will be engaged in a confrontation, most likely in two different theaters, Eastern Europe and the Pacific. And I don't know if the U.S. can actually handle that level of conflict, especially after everything this country has been through over the past few years. We're a demoralized nation. Our southern border is in shambles as millions just walk into this country unchecked and unabated. If the U.S. were to engage in war in Eastern Europe or in the Pacific against China over the taking of Taiwan, do you think the enemies of the United States will overlook the disastrous and porous southern border as a means of sowing domestic discontent and conflict, forcing the U.S. to retreat or destabilizing our economy? If the southern border is not secured, the United States cannot engage in a war. And if it does, it will not succeed. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it is Chinese interests. They want Taiwan. The history of Taiwan is a complicated one, but China views it as its own sovereign territory. If the U.S. can't defend Taiwan, what does that say to Japan, to the Pacific Islands? What does it say to Vietnam, these other countries? What does it say to Americans with Hawaii and Alaska? It says that China will become the dominant global power. And while we are preoccupied with Ukrainian borders for some reason, we will be taken advantage of, and we are being taken advantage of. And if you look at home domestically, you can see the chaos just shows. I don't think the United States is going to be able to pull through this one. It's not just about the war and the conflict and the escalation, which we are absolutely watching. It's about the cultural issues. A viral video of TikTok army women doing dances and trying to hide because the drill sergeant is coming. That's the army. Perhaps a trick, a ruse by the clever army intelligence. You see, we ordered these young women to do TikTok coordinated dancing to make our enemies think that we are weak, in fact, because that's the art of war. To appear weak to your enemy, I think. I don't know. That way they underestimate you or something. The art of war, Open your southern borders, destroy your own local economy. Yeah, I'm not sure any of that's supposed to be happening if you're actually planning on winning a war. One of the actual tenets of the art of war is to win the war before it starts. The U.S. hasn't done that. Maybe it has. Maybe we just don't realize it. But boy, do we have a lot to go through. Inside the United States, we have a very serious crisis, politically and culturally. How can we hope to achieve victory against these other countries? Memes are emerging showing Russian supermarkets filled with groceries and American supermarkets empty. Now, it's not real. It's just propaganda, but for who? I don't know why. I mean, we do have empty shelves here, but we also have stores with full shelves. Why highlight that difference and make it seem like Russia is doing better than we are? Perhaps to trick them into thinking we're too weak to actually win a battle or a war? I don't know. But some have said this is why you've been inundated with 5 years, or 6 or 7 actually, of anti-Russian propaganda, so that when the war breaks out, you'll know exactly why it did. Let's read about what's happening with this potential war and trending on Twitter, World War III. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support the work that we do here at Timcast. Our members-only podcasts are available to you if you are a member. Our journalists are funded by you as a member. So again, timcast.com, sign up, help support our work. But don't forget, share this video. Take the URL, post it wherever you can. Sharing is the most powerful thing you can do. And if you do this, we would be bigger than the mainstream media overnight if every single person shared these videos. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. Let's read the first story from the Daily Mail. President Biden is considering deploying 50,000 troops as well as warships and aircraft to NATO allies in Eastern Europe amid growing fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. The plan would see between 1,000 and 5,000 soldiers sent to NATO nations, such as Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Troop numbers could then be increased by up to 50,000 if the security situation deteriorates, backed up by fresh deployments of ships and aircraft. Pentagon officials presented the plan to Biden during a summit at Camp David over the weekend. The plan would not involve American troops deployed directly to Ukraine, with Biden thought to be loath to enter another conflict following his disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan. An NBC News report notes that other options presented to Biden ahead of an invasion were sending bomber flights over the region, ships into the Black Sea, and moving troops and equipment from other parts of Europe into Poland, Romania, and other countries that neighbor Ukraine. Biden is due to make the call on military measures as soon as this week. The Times detailed even as high-level talks between Washington and Moscow continue, with the U.S. due to submit a written response to Russian security demands. The Times claims this presents a change in Biden's strategy, claiming the administration is now moving away from its do not provoke Russia strategy. But the White House feels differently, noting that Biden already said during his press conference last week, we're going to actually increase troop presence in Poland, in Romania, etc., if in fact he moves. The president has publicly said that he'd deploy troops to Eastern Europe if the Russians invade. So I don't really get how the New York Times story advances that. A senior White House official told Playbook on its Monday morning edition. Now, many people are concerned. Joe Biden recently at a press conference said, if there was a minor incursion from Russia into Ukraine, we would discuss what we would do. But if they use the full force of what they're capable of, then we would swiftly respond. What does that mean? If Russia engages in a minor incursion, we'll talk about it. Many around Europe and around the world were shocked by the language saying that Joe Biden was effectively inviting Russia to invade. And I will tell you this, I believe it is because they want the war. They want control. They need, what is the proper Latin phrase? Casus belli? Is that how it says? Am I saying that wrong? I don't know the exact term, but a cause for war, a justification. The U.S. can't just invade. They can't just go there and stomp out Russia. They need Russia to do something so that the U.S. can say, oh, no, now we have war. You know, I thought the Democrats would engage in advanced lockdowns this year because they need something to campaign on. I think I was wrong about that. Luke Rutkowski said he thought with the Omicron variant, the Democrats were going to back away from this and ultimately the COVID restrictions would end. Plus, if the U.S. is going to be engaging in war, we need to bolster our economy, which means the lockdowns must stop. Those things together, I'd be willing to say I was wrong about this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to make any predictions, but I think Luke may be right. I think we're going to start seeing the removal of these restrictions. You're seeing it in Europe. Why? Perhaps they know war is coming. It's time to drive our economy as hard as we can because a war is fast approaching. From the Daily Caller, you thought it was just Joe Biden talking about deploying troops? No. NATO deploys fighter jets, aircraft carriers to Eastern Europe as threat of Russian invasion grows. NATO said Monday that it was deploying fighter jets and aircraft carriers to Eastern Europe. NATO allies are putting forces on standby and sending additional ships and fighter jets to NATO deployments in Eastern Europe, reinforcing allied deterrence and defense as Russia continues its military buildup in and around Ukraine. Specifics surrounding how many ships and jets would be sent remained unclear. The announcement came a day after President Joe Biden reportedly began considering whether to send thousands of U.S. troops to the region in an attempt to deter Russia. The U.S. has also made clear that it is considering increasing its military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, NATO said. The statement outlined how NATO members plan to join the allied military front. Denmark is deploying a frigate to the Baltic Sea and 4 fighter jets to Lithuania. Spain is dispatching ships and jets in the same manner as France has said that it may send troops to Romania. NATO will continue to take all necessary measures to protect and defend all allies, including by reinforcing the eastern part of the alliance. We will always respond to any deterioration of our security environment, including through strengthening our collective defense, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said. The Allied forces will counter over 100,000 Russian troops stationed near the Ukrainian border. And while Russia seemed poised to invade the former member of the USSR, having already invaded Crimea in 2014, the Kremlin has denied that it plans to invade the sovereign nation. My friends, many have already pointed this out. Russia has invaded. They're in Crimea. The U.S. did nothing. NATO did nothing. Russia will likely invade. I do not believe the U.S. should be involved in this. I really don't. But I don't see a way out. I don't see how there's any other circumstance other than the dominoes are falling right before our eyes. World War III? Perhaps, I don't know. But it's not just going to be Russia. China will be involved. In a tweet from Jake Schneider on Twitter, he is the GOP Rapid Response. State Department, do not travel to Ukraine due to imminent war. And COVID. I don't really care about the COVID part. But they say, exercise due to threats, do not travel to Ukraine due to the increased threats of the Russian military and COVID-19. Right now, on Twitter, World War III is trending. In the top posts, we have some people saying, disease, pestilence, World War III, like a dystopian 1970s sci-fi movie. World War III, trending. Because people think that it's not just going to be Russia, and I think that it's a fair point. The United States has ordered family members of embassy staff to leave Ukraine. The State Department warned that the U.S. would not be in a position to evacuate U.S. citizens should Russia invade. The embassy will remain open for now, senior State Department officials said in a briefing with reporters, but some diplomats have been authorized to depart as well. The State Department also cited the possibility of Russian military action in keeping its travel risk advisory at level 4, the highest category, urging U.S. citizens to not travel to Ukraine. The advisory was raised to that level last month because of concerns about COVID. Quote, U.S. citizens should be aware that Russian military action anywhere in Ukraine would severely impact the U.S. Embassy's ability to provide consular services, including assistance to U.S. citizens in departing Ukraine. Visa processing and most other consular services at the embassy will continue for the time being, officials said. The embassy is one of the larger American missions in Europe. It has about 900 employees total, the vast majority of them Ukrainians, some of whom have been with the mission since it opened 3 decades ago. The State Department officials said they did not know how many American citizens are currently in Ukraine. The U.S. Embassy in neighboring Minsk, Belarus, issued a new alert on Sunday night, also urging Americans to stay away from public demonstrations and consider leaving the country amid reports of further unusual Russian military activity near Ukraine's borders, including the border with Belarus last week. Britain on Saturday accused Putin of plotting to replace Ukraine's government with pro-Russian leaders. And the State Department has warned that Moscow could be planting false intelligence that could be later used to justify an invasion. President Biden has been weighing several options that could expand America's military presence in the region. William Taylor, a retired veteran diplomat who served twice as ambassador to Ukraine, said in an interview that he was not surprised by the State Department's decision. He said that conversations about a potential evacuation had been taking place for 1 to 2 months between the embassy and State Department headquarters in Washington. Quote, I think this is a prudent step, he said. On the Russian side, there's the continued buildup, the continued massing of troops. He pointed out that the Russian military has missiles that can reach across Ukraine and weapons that can lob artillery shells deep into Ukraine. And tensions could rise in the next week as the Biden administration steps up deterrence measures, said Mr. Taylor. I don't know exactly what to expect, but I would heed these warnings. They're telling you to stay away. You likely should, however many of you may find yourselves headed to or in Ukraine. I will also point out, this is the New York Times. They helped get us into war in Iraq. I do not trust them at all. I think the New York Times has faltered. I think their message is trash, and I think their journalism is garbage. So we will see. In the meantime, Newsweek says Ukraine condemns U.S. decision to begin evacuating people from the country. Well, the reason Ukraine is probably saying this is because it costs them money. people being there spending things, good for Ukraine. Ukraine can use that increased economic activity to buy weapons to defend themselves. As more and more people flee, Ukrainian citizens likely will start fleeing for a variety of reasons. I mean, one, the economy is not that strong, and now with the prospect of war, if you have an opportunity to get out of Ukraine, people will probably take it. I don't believe it will end there, as I've already stated. In this story from ABC News, China sends 39 warplanes towards Taiwan, largest in new year. China's flown 39 warplanes in its largest such sortie of the new year, amid tensions over the self-ruled island's future, and as the U.S. pushes to assert its presence in the region. The Chinese formation Saturday night included 24 J-16 fighter jets and 10 J-10 jets, among other support and electronic warfare aircraft. Taiwan's Air Force scrambled its own jets and tracked the People's Liberation Army planes on its air defense radar system. The Chinese sortie came as the U.S. military said that two of its carrier strike groups were sailing on Sunday in the South China Sea, led by USS Carl Vinson and USS Abraham Lincoln. They engaged in anti-submarine air and combat readiness operations. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs declined to comment on why the PLA had flown such a large sortie on Monday, saying it was not a diplomatic matter. Taiwan and China split during a civil war in 1949. We understand this, and I'll give you the brief understanding. China was not always communist. The communists took over. The actual government of China remained in Taiwan. China, now being a large communist country, believes that the original government is illegitimate, and thus they've taken over. Let me tell you guys something. Any logical view of what's happening would say Taiwan is the actual Republic of China. Just because a group of ideological zealots takes over a landmass and then claims the name doesn't mean it's that country. China, as far as it goes in terms of its name, was ended the moment these people, the Communist Party, took over and started executing anyone who disagreed. If the U.S. was invaded by a group of people, calling it the U.S. does not change the fact the country has been invaded and conquered. Where this goes? Potential war. The South China Morning Post reports Taiwan war risk highest in the past 25 years as U.S. tensions rise, mainland experts warn. I hope not. I certainly hope not, but hope is not really going to get you all that far, is it? Pretending to be blindly optimistic is not going to solve anything. The reality is we've got a warmonger political party, the U.S. establishment. They want war. They love war. They make money off it. They control the people off it. They use the fear to control you. They use the fear to make money. They use the fear to take your money so they can buy more weapons, advance more weapons, and maintain their imperialistic power. So war is good for them. War with Ukraine, at least, because the U.S. knows Russia can't do much if the full force of the U.S. drops down on it. But with China pressing against us and a real fear of Thucydides' trap, perhaps it's a rock and a hard place, my friends. Perhaps as soon as Russia moves in, the U.S. responds. China will leap right onto Taiwan. The U.S. will be split between two war fronts. And then what? We falter? I'm going to show you the reality of what's happening. In this post from Mediaite, let's talk about the state of the U.S. military and my levels of confidence. U.S. Army Twitter account mocked for using Lana Del Rey quote, "Please don't let China see this tweet." Quote, the U.S. Army showed a young woman crawling under barbed wire in what appears to be basic training. Quote, "Being brave means knowing that when you fail, you don't fail forever." Lana Del Rey. And you have a picture of this woman. The United States cares so much for political correctness that they are entertaining this idea that our army, our armed forces, will be better served with Lana Del Rey quotes and female soldiers. Let me clarify this. Let me make sure I get you all the nuance in here. I have tremendous respect for the women who served in the armed forces. I have tremendous respect for the women who are providing assistance and support, and for those who are willing to undergo basic training. But we need to be real about the state of political correctness in this country, how it is actually infecting this country, and ultimately can lead to our ruin. It's a good thing when women serve. I think so. There's maternity flight suits that made the news a while back. Seems a little odd and absurd to me. I don't know why we would need pregnant female pilots, but okay. Maybe flight suits aren't just for that. Maybe that's naive of me, right? Maybe, or I should say not naive, but ignorant. And there are a lot of people. But I can speak personally to this one. And I say to everybody, feel free to offer up the other context I may be missing. I know a lot of people who've been in the Army. I know a decent amount of people who have gone through basic training. And the one thing I often hear is that when men and women go through basic training, the women are cut slack. They don't do real push-ups. They cry. They break down. They're required to be able to be given showers. They can walk away from whatever they want. The men can't. I don't know what the point is of basic training if you don't have people actually engage in it. Now, perhaps this is but anecdotal, and it's just that I know a handful of people who've experienced all these similar things in different circumstances. Let me show you this one. This is a video, Daily Caller Shorts. Here you have a bunch of young women in their Army, pajamas, I guess, and they're doing choreographed TikTok dancing. It's a video from the Daily Caller. Choreographed, chest bumping, hand waving, TikTok dancing. We are a silly nation. We are not a serious people. We're children. We are a nation of permanent children. Here we go. Get that TikTok dance. That's what it's all about. In another clip highlighted by the Daily Caller, you have these women attempting to choreograph their TikTok dance when all of a sudden, there's some men there too. All of a sudden, drill sergeant's coming. Quick, grab the phone. I get it, man. People goof off. I got no problem with that. I see no issue with people goofing off. But we are a silly people. At a time when we're getting military ads from Russia of men with shaven heads jumping from planes, what the message that's coming out on social media from the United States is, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And narrative is important. It really, really is. Morale is important. I understand. This is just a bunch of people goofing off, and people goof off. It's not that big of a deal. I agree. I would say that, yes. But it's not so much that I'm concerned about the TikTok dancing as individuals. A bunch of young women, doing their chest bumping, hand waving dance. It's that this is the message being sent out at a time of an escalation towards war. That you, as someone who's in the Army, can't speak politically. You can't stand up and say, Joe Biden screwed this country in Afghanistan. Because that guy, what happened to him? He goes to jail. Well, ultimately, they let him go. But that was a scandal, a major scandal. What happens when you get people making a mockery of our armed forces, showing weakness, demoralizing? Perhaps it's some people think that you need this for morale. Nothing. It's just the way it is. So I can only say, at a time when we're experiencing serious conflict and an escalation that may lead to World War III, the message being sent and being seen is Army commercials of little girls talking about how they have two moms. That's great. Congratulations. I'm glad you found pride in your family, and congratulations to your loved ones. Shouldn't that be like a PBS infomercial and not an Army ad? Now, I can understand, we still have the Marines, and the Marine commercials are a bit more brutal. But when it comes to the message we're trying to send to people, to assert our ability to fight in conflict, is this the message we want getting out? These women doing the chest-bumping TikTok dances. The issue here is, shouldn't there be command? Shouldn't there be someone who's in charge of a narrative? Shouldn't there be someone who says, this is the image and the brand of the U.S. Armed Forces? Because I will tell you this. This is an old known trope in marketing PR. If you do not have a message, someone will make the message for you. So by all means, ladies, do your bosom dance. Great. And I'm sure that in Russia, they're laughing at us because we are not a serious people. Meanwhile, in the United States, our border is collapsing. TSA confirms it lets illegal immigrants use arrest warrants as ID in airports. I do not understand how this country expects to survive a conflict on two fronts. I'm flabbergasted by this story. The TSA confirmed to Fox News on Friday that it allows illegal immigrants to use arrest warrants as an alternative form of ID to board planes. For non-citizens and non-U.S. nationals who do not otherwise have acceptable forms of ID for presentation, at security checkpoints, the TSA may also accept certain DHS-issued forms, including warrant for arrest of an alien. Does the warrant have your photo on it? I'd imagine it does. Shouldn't they arrest you on the spot when you present to them a warrant for their arrest? We're not a serious people. No, we are children. We are permanent children. I got to be honest. I as much as I can understand that people in the army want to goof off and have fun, I am disgusted by the TikTok dancing. It's the TikTok dancing itself. It's, me going out and seeing kids put their phone on a windowsill in the middle of the street and start doing music video dancing. And I'm just like, I get it, man. Future generations develop their own cultures and do different things. But TikTok, China-owned app, putting us in this position. It is what it is, man. Allow me to be that grumpy old man who says, dancing is forbidden. No, I don't really think it's forbidden. I have no issue with people having fun. That's besides the point. I think the choreography in a lot of these TikTok videos actually fairly impressive. Like, it's cool that people are learning this stuff. And to be honest, I think when it even comes to the army, teamwork building. They're building rapport. They're friends. They're doing something together. They're coordinating. There's a lot of benefit to that. There is. It's about the message we're sending out. It's about the nurses in the hospitals, TikTok dancing on the graves of the COVID dead. And China is absolutely playing a powerful game with us. China, TikTok, China, Wuhan lab. I think the problem with the United States is that we are ruled by the old, by the elderly. Our politicians are too old to understand the modern world. Bill Maher, the boomer, is talking about things on his show that we've all talked about a year ago. Maybe we're watching something new with all of us, those of you who watch these videos and share them, and similar videos and similar content. Maybe we're watching the emergence of a new mentality, a new zeitgeist, and the old will have to be shed away like an exoskeleton. We've grown too big for all of this. But in the meantime, it means that those of us that are aware of what's going on, we don't have the power to do anything about it. Our generals are woke. Our president is pushing woke policies. Our establishment politicians are living in the past and don't understand modern warfare. And China knows war. There's a question you need to ask when you're looking at any of this stuff. What is war? What is it? I'm sure you can look up a simple definition. Conflict between two groups over control of a country or something. War. You know it when you see it, I suppose, but maybe you don't. Maybe we and the elderly that run this country, the decrepit, old, mentally unfit Joe Bidens, and even in Donald Trump, to his credit for the things I did like, he's an old man as well. Schumer, Pelosi, and again, Bill Maher. The elderly. Okay, Bill Maher's not that old, but for the most part, the elderly. They can't see what's happening. They don't understand warfare outside of missile strikes. China thought ahead. They said war is the means by which we can take over, manipulate, and control. And that's what we have. We have media manipulation. We have TikTok manipulation, algorithmic manipulation. Fourth and fifth generational warfare. False flag attacks, but fifth generational warfare, the most important, propaganda. If you look back at a lot of wars, it was often about resources, competition, fears. Sometimes they'd be scared you'd attack, you're going to attack me, so I'm going to attack you first. And it was physical conflict, a way to control another group for some reason or another. Maybe to steal their resources, maybe to get them to produce something for you, maybe to make sure that you were in charge of how they lived their lives. Maybe it was moral, maybe it was religious. If you didn't have to fire a single round to win a war, would you? Of course. Who wouldn't? I think China knows that. I think China knows that if we just manipulate through information, the West, we can take over their countries without ever having to fire a single round. And they wouldn't even know we were at war with them and destroying their lives. That's why it's funny. For a while, there was a word in Chinese, baicua, means white left. And they made fun of the social justice warriors. All of a sudden, something happened. A bunch of Chinese personalities, like government personalities, Chinese Communist Party, started praising social justice, started using their message. Interesting. I think they realized that it was tearing this country apart. At first, they thought it was a means to criticize us because the world would see the emperor has no clothes. Then I think they realized, hey, this is growing. And actually, it's destroying the country from within. Now we have woke culture. Now we have the woke military. And all of those diversity trainings they're going through, not going to help them. Look, in World War II, people of different races fought. Certainly not a perfect world, a very racist one. Today's day and age, we don't need this stuff. We're one of the most progressive generations ever, even those that are more conservative or libertarian. Yet it's happening. It's distracting us. And war is on the verge of breaking out, and the U.S. is in shambles. Our border is insecure. Illegal immigrants use arrest warrants to fly without being arrested. People have lost confidence that any of this is this country is going to stay together. Democrats want more lockdowns. Republicans disagree. People are fleeing blue states. You know, a lot of what happened with COVID was beneficial in the sense that it moved a portion of our economy back to the U.S. It got people out of major cities. And I mentioned this. You know, those moves would greatly benefit us if a war with China broke out. Now here we are, potentially facing World War III. Well, I guess it's a good thing that our cities have decentralized. I guess it's a good thing that we're doing remote learning and remote working. Because when you had everybody working in one city, that city got nuked. Your economy's gone. Now, because of COVID, we've decentralized to a great degree. Could that be it? Could it be that the plan was always we were going to go to war and certain measures had to be taken without informing our enemies of why we're taking them? We can't come out and say, hey, war is coming soon. Everybody, leave the city. It wouldn't work. But Democrats in the establishment basically said, hey, we're going to go to war soon. So let's just ramp up the lockdowns and the restrictions and drive people as far away from cities as possible. Maybe. Thucydides' trap. War with Russia, war with China. We'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.